All right, hello everybody. My name is Ross, and I'm not here for Deku Digest today, but I'm here to talk to one of our wonderful creators who has a new show on Deku, Marriage of Inconvenience. I'm here with actor, writer, director, producer, Jason T. Gaffney. Hey, how are you?
Hi, Ross. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Did I miss any credits? Did you also do like crafty?
I did a lot. Thankfully, my husband did crafty for the shoot, but I definitely did a little production design, a little bit of prop creation, a little editing. But
Fantastic.
yeah, I mean, it's an indie film, so there's a lot of multiple hat wearing experiences.
How did you kind of come to this idea of witness protection, kind of an odd couple style series?
My writing partner, who happens to be my biological father, Ed Gaffney, and I love comedy. And so we're constantly looking for scenarios that lend itself to comedy. Um, and and so when we were kind of brainstorming, one of the things that My Pet Hippo Productions does is we tell the post coming out stories. We tell the stories about LGBTQ plus people after the coming out, because even though coming out movies are very important and still very much needed, queer people lead rich, exciting lives after that initial coming out. And and so we constantly look for conflicts that can come from other ways. And so when we were kind of brainstorming, we were thinking like, all right, maybe some people end up in witness protection. What if they don't know each other? What if they're completely polar opposites? We didn't initially set out to make an odd couple kind of recreation, but once we realized that's where we were heading, we leaned into it and we paid homage by giving our lead characters the O and F for their names, so Owen and Franklin, kind of for Oscar and Felix.
That did not click for me even when I was watching it. I was like, oh, these are names. That's really interesting. That's yeah, a whole nother layer. And you know what? I mean, you brought it up a minute ago that your one of your creative partners is your biological father, and uh, he's a lawyer by day. I believe on his IMDb profile it said he's a like secret funny lawyer. So how did this partnership with him start?
I'm guessing around 2010. I had happened to be watching a whole bunch of gay films on Netflix at the time, and I noticed the fact that there was that running theme of every movie seemed to have a coming out, and they were all powerful, all moving. But I reached a point where I was like, I just want to see a rom com where the conflict has nothing to do with the sexual orientation of the characters. I just want the same, boy meets boy, boy loses boy gets boy back, that kind of stuff. So I called him up one night and was like, we're gonna make a movie, and the lead characters are gonna be gay, and here's the kicker: no one's gonna care. It's gonna be just a regular rom com. And my dad was like, all right, yeah, let's talk about this tomorrow. And if you're still thinking about it, we can talk about it. And the next day, I called him up first thing and was like, no, we're doing this. And that was when we kickstarted the script writing process for The Perfect Wedding. And from there, we fell in love with doing this, and we haven't looked back. We're just trucking forward and making more and more content. And here we are now with Marriage of Inconvenience.
Yeah, that's right. We have Marriage of Inconvenience now, and actually, in a few months, there will be a different project of yours coming on Deku, Out of Body. I'm interested in kind of this uh, idea that you're talking about now with like going past the coming out process because it's interesting. Depending on the week, Deku, we always try to have new films, and sure, a lot of them tend to focus on like coming out or kind of the 6 months after where you're really starting to understand who you are or doing that trial and error. And I'm curious, is your reasoning to kind of skip past that phase, like have you ever wanted to eventually try to do a comedy about that process, almost like a farce, or are you more interested in kind of these uncharted territories or less trodden tropes and genres for queer cinema?
I feel like there's a lot of people out there in the queer community who have powerful coming out stories to tell, including the really accepting ones. Like when you look at like Love Simon and that powerful scene, it's we're progressing forward to the idea of a coming out story where it is just like the coming out happens and the parents are like, cool, we're good, we're moving forward. But for a lot of people still, coming out can be a very traumatic and scary and scarring process because there's the risk of rejection from families, etc. And to a degree, I'm constantly coming out to people. Every time I meet someone new, I have to either mention my husband or mention my sexual orientation. And, you know, I'm I'm so out at this point that I don't even try to hide it or shy away from it because I'm proud of who I am. But, it's really nice when I get a chance to watch something and the LGBTQ plus characters are just existing and just experiencing the same human wants and desires as everyone else. And that's really, I think that there are more and more stories like that being told and created, but there's not enough because it humanizes us as a group. It shows different demographics when they get a chance to watch that type of movie. Oh, they just want dinner. Or, oh, they're just looking for someone to do laundry with, the same as me.
Right.
I don't want to speak for all of the queer community, but there's a large portion of the queer community that wants that.
I think there is that fear, and when I watch a movie and I realize, like, oh, there's a queer character, I wonder what's going to happen with them. There is that trope of queer characters experiencing just a tragedy and not getting to have that happy ending. And I think you're right that you kind of have to just move past that, at least for a little while. I was actually watching this documentary about trans representation in media, and the idea right now is that it's not so much that queer people shouldn't portray like villains or have a sad ending, but it's just when that's the only representation and option, that's kind of when it's a bigger problem.
Absolutely. And, that's something that we've really strived to work on as a whole is that I don't always want to play a good guy. I don't always want to be a knight in shining armor. And if I'm going to be a bad guy and I'm going to be a gay character that's a bad guy, there better be a gay character that's a good guy in the film just to show the opposite. And it's really easy. I mean, if you look at Hollywood across the board, there's been some pretty sketchy things from the past where, like, you look at the villains in a lot of movies or the people who are portrayed as criminals, it tends to unfortunately be disproportionately black characters. And that's something that we actively fight against. So, for example, in this series, my character is a former drug dealer, and David Allen Singletary, who plays Franklin, he's a former college professor. And fortunately and unfortunately, when we have told people about the series, people have made the instant assumption that David is playing the drug dealer.
Wow.
Because he is black. And it's like, I'm so glad we're making this series because, like, even in progressive circles, people are making those assumptions. And it's like, no, we need to stop that. It is not like there are a lot of white criminals out there. We just don't see it because Hollywood keeps whitewashing everything.
Yeah. Come on, white people, step up your criminal game right now.
I know. Yeah, exactly.
So going back to the series, like I said at the beginning, you wear so many different hats in this production. Can you talk a little bit about how you kind of navigate that on set? Because, like you said, you're one of the leads in the show. You're also the co-writer. You're directing. Like, how do you juggle all of that?
So part of it is pre-production. My one bit of unsolicited advice to everyone who's trying to make a film or in process: if you map out everything, even though once you start filming, the majority of that will get thrown out the window because of outside circumstances, you will at least have a blueprint for how your day will go. You will know what shots are necessary to get to tell your story. You will have an ebb and flow. Also making sure that everything is marked. So like I get all the props in place, all of the set design in place, and they're marked very, very carefully as to what room they need to be in and what day they're on. That way, if I am being taken away to go to makeup, but they need to get a shot without me, they know where to get those things. So it's all about that pre-production, and then having a team that can really, really support. And so thankfully, my husband is very supportive. He helps out with a lot of the production paperwork and the crafting and all that stuff. And then my dad comes on set, and he's able to kind of act as a first AD, kind of script supervisor, which really helps for when it comes time for action and cut. If I'm in a scene with a fellow actor, I don't like to say action because it can be really jarring if you're getting really intimate with someone and you're like,
Sure.
action, right in their face. But I will call cut, because sometimes I like to let the last moment linger a bit, because I can either use the footage as filler or we just get to see a really great acting moment. So having those kind of things put into place really helps with the flipping back and forth of the hat wearing. But I will say this, there's very few breaks for me. It's pretty much go, go, go.
Do you have a different process, or I guess have you found that you have a different process between writing a feature that has a beginning, middle, and end, and a series which, spoiler at the end of this, there definitely is open room for more?
I prefer writing features because I like writing a story that has a beginning, middle, end. So when we started writing Marriage of Inconvenience, I needed to map out 3 seasons because that way I had an idea of where the characters were going to go. One of my pet peeves when I watch a series that I fall in love with is it's kind of a gamble if season 2 is going to go in a direction I want it to go in, because the writers don't always, because Hollywood is so great at being like, we're going to do season 1 and then, oh, surprise, you get a season 2, and they're not ready for it. And they're like, we need it tomorrow. And they're like, there have been times where it gets a little messy. And so I didn't want to do that. I really wanted to know where the characters were going to go. So I kind of wrote a beginning, middle, and end for the characters with the knowledge that hopefully this is a huge hit and I have to figure out how to draw it out and extend it, which thankfully this type of situational kind of comedy lends itself to that. There's plenty of ways we can go. But it ended up being a blast. It really did. And we filmed it still very similarly to a film. We filmed all the episodes at once, so we did that same kind of movie style filming, which helped my brain kind of calibrate as well.
I was pleasantly surprised, I'd say, at the end of season 1 of this show, where it wasn't, they're all resolved, and then the last second is maybe, this completely unrelated new thing is happening. I was actually listening to a podcast on the way over to this interview earlier today, and Lost creator David Lindelof, and obviously Marriage of Inconvenience is going to be the next Lost. But,
of course.
He basically said that, like, an audience knows when you're kind of treading water and just trying to figure out where to go next, and even if, hopefully, knock on wood, we get to see more of these characters, but they have drive, they have momentum, they have a purpose for the duration of and even beyond the scope of the show. So, I mean, kudos to doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess with season 2 not a guarantee yet, you definitely have your idea of where you want to go. Are there any thoughts about what you can share about what you're where you're thinking of going, or maybe is there something that you had to cut from season one?
We had to shift one of the scenes from the past out of season one, and that's going to come back into play in season two. I have some plans with certain backstory stuff for both Owen and Franklin. As we go, we're going to learn more and more about their personal lives and part of why they act the way that they do. And we see a bit of that in season one, but we'll get to know even more of who they are in the second season. But the plan is to see Owen and Franklin as they kind of navigate the possibilities of dating outside of their fictional marriage, and how does that look, and how can they keep up the facade. There's a plan for Owen in season two with his artwork, and perhaps getting a little more attention for his artwork than one in witness protection really wants to get. I have an arc with Diane and Owen in particular, where Diane, throughout the series, is going to get closer and closer with Owen, and we're going to learn a bit about Diane's history and why she became a U.S. Marshal, specifically in witness protection. It may or may not have to do with a relative of hers who may or may not have entered witness protection. I wanted to go into this with those types of pre-planned stories, with the hope that we get to tell them, and the knowledge that if we don't, for whatever reason, like, at least we gave a solid season one. I hope we get to do an even better season two and an even better season three. And who knows how many seasons beyond that. But yeah, there are plans in place. And the best part is the fact that they are opposites. It's really easy to find those comedic scenarios, because generally if one of them likes something, the other one will not. And so then you just get to have them go into that situation and clash.
What was the process like with Deku? Like, my producer and I were talking about it a little bit beforehand, that Deku, I think, kind of just entrusted you after you kind of pitched it and got it approved to just enact your vision. So what was that like for you?
Deku has been a fantastic partner. They are so filmmaker friendly. Basically, once they knew the concept, their policy is basically, we're gonna let the creatives be creative. We're not gonna try to intervene or change stuff. Like, obviously, they wanted to read the scripts and make sure I wasn't making a film about like hate crimes or whatever, or being bad or anything like that. But they really were like, just go. We trust you. We've seen your prior work. We know that you're going to do good stuff. And it was actually a nice confidence booster for me in this process, because it's so easy to let your own inner saboteur tell you you're not good enough or you don't deserve this, all of those things. And to have a company like Deku basically say, "Oh no, you do deserve this, and we want to support you, and we want to team up with you so you can tell this story." It helped. It helped me, especially. I mean, we were supposed to film pre-pandemic, and then we got kind of put in limbo for several years. But it gave me that drive, even through the pandemic, to be like, we just have to hold on. Once the vaccine comes out, we can film this. We can do this.
I also want to just point out, just because I'm a big fan of when shows do this, and I really appreciated that for Marriage of Inconvenience, every episode title, like the title sequence, is changed a little bit. Like, it has to do with the plot a little bit. Like, the last episode of the season has some paint on the piece of paper that has redacted info. Is there any sort of little detail or something that you're really proud of that you want to kind of flag here for our audience to keep an eye out for?
The voices of the Pacoima men, the house husbands of Pacoima, are actually my parents and my husband. And so we had a fun session after filming to just kind of see what we could come up with. And when I was putting together the series, one of the kind of themes I wanted to convey is that even though these guys are polar opposites, they have way more in common than we think. And part of that we also see is with Diane, where she thinks that she and Owen have nothing in common. But if you watch carefully, you might see that what she's watching on TV happens to be the House Husbands of Pacoima. So that's a nice little, like, I like dropping in those kind of gems where, like, you wouldn't necessarily notice it on your first go round, but then when you go back, you'll be like, oh my goodness, she's watching the Chainsaw episode of the House Husbands of Pacoima.
If we hopefully get a season 2, we probably need to see an actual video clip of the House Husbands. Uh, Jason T. Gaffney, thank you for taking some time to talk to us. Obviously, Marriage of Inconvenience is coming to Deku. It's available now, hopefully, if you're watching this video right now. But thank you so much. Any last thing that you want to add before we say goodbye?
Support indie LGBTQ plus film. We need more support from everyone. And thank you to those who are supporting it. We can't make this without people watching and without telling your friends and family to watch it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. All right. Thank you so much. For Deku Digest, I'm Ross. Have a great day, everybody.